Hello, I'm Rob Walker.
And I'm Emily Eccles.
And this is the Civil Service Pensions Podcast.
We work for civil service pensions. We're communicators and we're passionate about making the complicated seem straightforward.
But we don't know everything there is to know about pensions.
We're back for a second season to learn alongside you. In every episode, we go back to basics to help you get to grips with your civil service pension and make more informed choices about your financial future.
Every week, we'll be chatting to expert guests and members of the scheme to find out how you can get the most out of your pension and why it's one of the best in the UK public sector. For today's Minisode, we're bringing you something a little bit different. We're chatting to Gerald, who took ill health retirement after a long, illustrious career in HMRC. Since retiring, he's taken up a whole new line of work.
Look out for next week's episode when you'll hear Gerald's story in full, but for now, here's a sneak preview.
I'd broken my back, fractured my spine very badly. Crikey. When I was young, when I was 10. And as the years went on, it really didn't cause me any problems whatsoever. And then about 18 months prior to my intended retirement age of 60, I started getting severe back pains. And they were affecting my ability to lift things, to carry things, to sit. And it was round about that time when I'd actually finished the role to do with learning and developing the course. So I'd gone back to my old job. And my first task then was to actually manage the retirement of a gentleman who also had back pain, which had subsequently turned out to be terminal cancer.
Gosh.
So that made me think that, well, maybe these back pains, they're not something, that's just going to finish very easily.
Right.
So I eventually got to see a consultant. And what had happened on the MRI scan, you can still see the one vertebra, which is still a sort of cracks all over it where it got very badly fractured. But the discs either side had actually worn away with age. So whereas that happens to everybody when they get sort of a bit older, they can still function. But unfortunately, because of the fracture, it meant that everything else was piling down on that one point. So I was expecting, at the time I spoke to the consultant, I was expecting him to say that give 2 or 3 weeks of rest and, that would be it. And I would recover.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he says, you're going to be having a severe amount of pain, he says, but it will settle down in 2 or 3. And then he said, you won't notice it because your body and your mind and your senses will adapt to the background pain and then it won't be so bad. So I said, oh, right, 2 or 3 weeks. I said, that's what I thought. He says, no, he says 2 or 3 years.
Crikey.
Which could have knocked me over with a feather. Because it suddenly threw everything up in the air.
Absolutely.
I'd already been taking some days of sick leave off. I didn't know where I stood, or what I should do. And that left me in a very difficult situation because I had further talks with a consultant and I told him what my job was. And he says, well, you will not be able to continue doing that. Not in the short term. Well, I was going to retire in 18 months anyway. So I then explained the situation to my employers. I insisted on being seen by occupational health. They recommended I should be referred to the scheme medical advisor. Well, as soon as the medical advisor got it, which was so detailed from a professional consultant in that type of injury, there was no doubt. And after that, everything was as smooth as could be.
So how are you doing now? Things better?
Well, by and large, yes. I mean, I do get days when I get pain, but I can put up with it.
So it's still something that whilst it's easier to manage than it was in those early days, that it's still kind of part of...
It's still part of my life.
Yeah. So what are you doing in your retirement?
Well, one of the best things I did for my mental health, I think, was to completely get rid of any aspect of what I used to do. I was a professionally qualified chartered tax advisor and I kept my membership going as a retired member and I decided, no, that's going in the bin. Finish that. I became a writer.
Oh, wow.
I've always enjoyed reading crime novels. And I thought, well, I'll do it myself. And I decided to write my first book. Some people can wait 15 years to get a publishing contract. I got mine in 3 months.
Wow.
So I've moved on to another publisher. I've had 3 books published so far, as Leslie Scase is one I write under, which is my middle name. So I've got 3 published so far, murder mysteries. I've got the 4th currently with a publisher. The 5th is virtually finished, but in the meantime, I'm writing the 6th as well. So
hot off the press. Look out.
That is amazing.
Coming soon.
Yeah, I'm not a well-known name yet, but what I am, I'm a member of the Crime Writers Association. I feel well regarded by my peers, by other crime writers. Quite a lot of them know me, and I've attended, been on a panel at the largest crime fiction festival in Europe, in Bristol. So everything's going really well.
What would you say to somebody who was going through something similar to, what you went through, who's having problems with their health to the extent where they, can't work anymore? What would you say to somebody in that situation?
There's an acceptance of fate in respect of, you're going to have to finish. But thereafter, everybody's got their different financial position. You've got to take each individual case as it stands. But certainly you need to find an interest. An interest and something we haven't talked about, which is structure. Because you find that days merge. And so, for example, in my case, Monday is the jobs I really don't want to do day. Tuesday is shopping. Wednesday something else, Thursday something. So it's flexible. But every day has got some kind of thing attached to it, because particularly if you haven't reached that stage where you've got that interest, and it took me a while, 2 years before I started writing. And in that gap, you can find, I haven't got purpose. The days are merging into one, and you might start to completely lose track of things, particularly if you're unwell.
Yeah.
Because it certainly happened to me, I would say, first 2 years after I retired.
So you built some structure for yourself to try and help mitigate that?
Yeah.
It's good advice.
How did your family support you when you were going through the retirement process?
Well, the way they've always done. We're very close-knit. My daughter and my son-in-law live not that far away, and they've always been very, very caring. My wife's always been very supportive. So, yeah, it was just something that came naturally.
It must have really helped to have them close by and giving you that support when you were going through a life-altering situation.
Yes. So really, it was as straightforward as that. They were just there for me, and they've always been there for me.
Oh, you're very lucky. Very lucky indeed. And what about your wife? Was she retired, or did she retire later?
She retired later. No, at the time she was still working part-time. And I think that helped initially, because the other thing you've got to get used to when you retire, we've been married for over 40 years, and you're suddenly in a situation where you're with each other all day. and all joking apart, that can be a bit difficult initially. Well, in that initial time, my wife was still working part-time, and so we had that little bit of an adjustment just to get into the new structure as such.
Look out for our full episode on Gerald's retirement journey next week. But in the meantime, you can find out more about ill health retirement at civilservicepensionscheme.org.uk.
Make sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can also leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode was recorded in July 2023. Everything that we talked about is accurate at the time of recording.
Thanks for joining us.